So now we're delighted to be joined by Anita DeFrantz, Olympic medalist, civil rights attorney, LA28 Foundation president, the first African American and female vice president of the IOC, and currently IOC member, board member of LA28, and Coordinating Commission vice president for Brisbane 2032. Thank you so much for joining us, Anita. When we last spoke at Host City Americas, Tokyo 2020 was just around the corner. This was such an incredible success in the most difficult of circumstances. What were the biggest challenges and the greatest successes?
My opinion going into the games, the greatest challenge was trust. We needed the trust of the athletes, we needed the trust of the organizing committee, and we needed the trust of the Japanese people because there was great fear about, well, being in a pandemic, of course. And I'll tell you that I was so amazed at the joy of the athletes in the village. Now, mind you, they only had a limited time. They had to come in only 5 days before their competition, and they're asked to leave within 48 hours after the competition. So for the rookies, the athletes who hadn't competed before, that is their experience, which is so different from experiences that I've had and others have had. But the trust was well placed. The Olympic movement did not create a super spreader of COVID. Indeed, it kept things pretty low. IOC members as well as athletes were tested every single day, the Olympic family, staff, and IOC members. So we did our best, and the athletes had their chance to compete.
It was clearly inspirational for the whole world. And you're also on the board of LA28, which promises to be an Olympic Games like no other. What would you say the opportunities are for this event to transform the city and also the Olympic movement?
The beautiful thing about Los Angeles is we don't need to be transformed. We are always, I mean, right now we have almost too many venues to choose from, which is an amazing thing to say, but true. We'll be using only two from '84, the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum, because pretty much everything else is new. And we didn't build it, it was already there. We'll have one village, which will be nice. It'll be the first time in a very long time that there's been one village for all the athletes. And as for transforming the city, the games do that. The Olympic Games are a people-to-people event, and people get to meet folks they've never known about before, and they have experiences that they share. And indeed, that experience, as well as the legacy of the '84 Games, has kept a smile on people's face about hosting the games. Two other things we've already done. The first is, of course, our logo. It's lots of people can send in their A. I don't know if you're aware of it. It's an L, and then anyone can fill in the A with their own designs, and then 2028. So, I mean, that is absolutely unique, which is kind of what we are. We believe we are out here in LA. And the other beautiful thing is the Coliseum, which hosts both collegiate and professional, and next year high school football events, has figured out a way to have zero waste. And well, we haven't had the high school yet, but for both the professional and the collegiate games, they're able to do that. And they're sharing their technique with other large venues or other venues. So that's going to be a wonderful thing. Now, you
It's
asked me
incredible.
what it will do. Sorry, that you asked me what it will do. We don't know yet. Things will come along bit by bit, and I like to wait till the games are completed to list all those things that have been new and different.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have a crystal ball. I'm sure that LA will leave its footprint on the Olympic movement in a positive way, as so many games have done in the past. Speaking of games in the past, you were also very much involved in the legacy of LA84. How did you manage to make the surplus from the games generate further capital? What was this used for?
Well, we had a wonderful board of directors, and they were determined to stay as individualistic as they had been during the games. So rather than having an advisor, we kind of did it ourselves. We started with $93 million from the games, And during my 28 years as president, we spent $250 million. And when I left, the endowment was $160 million. We did it by using all sorts of private equity, which really made a difference. And what I'm very proud of was in the early days, rather than doing the normal kind of investments, we decided not to be in South Africa. And indeed, the board and staff, by the way, Conrad Freund was just exceptional. He was the treasurer of the 1984 games and also treasurer and CFO for LA28. Uh, what we did about South Africa was ask Wells Fargo to create a South Africa Free Fund, and they did. And it seems so obvious today, of course, but it was all small caps and small caps that were becoming large caps. But that made an enormous difference from the beginning. And then we moved into private equity, and we were very careful about that. And we monitored our investments, and we knew it was going to be a long-term investment, between 7 and 10 years. But in the meanwhile, the money thrown off really helped us. How did we spend it? We spent it on youth sports activities, helping the organizations that existed at the time with more equipment. We created programs, for example, the coaching program, which I'm very proud of, to teach people how to coach. Giving them a clipboard and a whistle doesn't make them a coach. They have to understand that their duty is to be teachers, especially in youth sports. So we did those two things. We also inherited an extensive library from what was called the Helms Hall of Fame collection, and it had never been cataloged, so we cataloged it. And once we knew what we had, we began to invest in more things that we needed. We also had a huge memorabilia, I don't know, a fund. I mean, that's not the right word. We had a huge store of memorabilia, which we used to help people understand the games, especially poster art and such. More importantly, I feel, is that our library has been completely digitized, so it's open 24/7, 365 to anyone who has Wi-Fi. And for me, the most important thing is that we were able to have conferences on subjects that other people would not touch. We had a conference on steroids. Uh, Most people didn't know that in the US for a long time, the doctors are saying, oh, steroids don't make a difference. Well, that was because they couldn't give it in the dosages or for the amount of time that was being used to enhance performance. We knew that clearly steroids were performance enhancing, and yet the US medical community said, oh, no, it's not a problem. It was a problem. We also did a conference on race and gender in televised sports, which we start calling the Race and Gender Conference, and we learned a lot. And we shared with the three at that time, the three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. ESPN only had women's volleyball. I wonder why. Anyway, and we were able to help them understand that their commentators were brainwashing us. For example, in women's tennis, we compared the U.S. Open in women and the U.S. Open in men. Uh, the way they were discussing the women's event was amazing. First of all, the women were only first names, and the men were always last names. And the women, oh, that was a mistake, blah, blah, blah. The men, oh, that was bad luck. So anyway, these things we were able to point out and help the world understand better.
Well, what's a fantastic thing to do to bring on the legacy of an event like that in such a positive way. You touched on sort of ethical investing there, and sports events have clearly done a lot to help cities and societies to develop throughout the last century, really. But there's a lot of inequality still all over the world, as you know from your work as a civil rights attorney. What role do you think that sports events could or should play in creating a fairer world? Do they have a role to play, or is it just about sports?
Yeah, sports have a role to play. I mean, on the field of play, certainly at the Olympic Games, you see the entire humanity. By the way, we are one race, the human race. We are all the same, and yet we're each unique. Even identical twins are not identical. So the word race should be tossed out in the trash bin of badness, if that's such a trash bin, because it makes no sense. We are one race. So on the field of play, and certainly from community all the way up to the most elite, there's a respect because each athlete that they're competing against knows what it took to get there. And there's a respect for that. In fact, the first time I lived in the Olympic Village, I saw a world of all sizes, shapes, colors, both sexes, and yet there was mutual respect and fair play. And so I said, if we could do this for 4 weeks, the village is open for 2 weeks before the games, we should be able to do it forever. And that gave me the belief in the Olympic movement as something very powerful for the world. But it doesn't have to be the Olympic movement. It can be a local event. It brings together people, the organizers, of course, and they'll have stories to tell. And having worked with different folks, and of course, the officials and the sponsors and everyone involved is a part of something that they work together on, and they share the success and they share the stories of things that could have gone differently perhaps, but it's a coming together that sports provides, and getting to know one another, even though it might be for a brief period of time, then the memories and the storytelling, which is what sports is about.
Absolutely, and events of all shapes and sizes, as you say, have such a huge role to play in developing communities and just making life better for everybody, of course. But at the heart of it, as you say, particularly for major sports events, are the athletes. And athletic achievement, as you know, like leading a team to win an Olympic medal, takes extraordinary personal qualities. How do you think athletes can channel these energies and these qualities to succeed in other areas of life, as you have gone on to do?
How can we use our athlete success to every day? Being an athlete is about decision making. You make decisions, hundreds of decisions during your time on the field of play. You make hundreds of decisions getting there. Every morning when you wake up, brush your teeth, you think about, what can I do today to help me be a better athlete? So it's about decision making. And that is essential in life. The other part about sport that is significant is especially the team play, because once we get out into the world, we're working on teams. We're not individuals. I tease my friends, swimmers, the wetheads as I call them, looking at the bottom of the pool. That takes enormous effort, which I probably would not be able, although all rowers have to swim. Uh, but being on a team is something special. Being in a part of a community is something special. So you can do it. I also used to ask before, well, let's see, we are already not quite in the 21st century. I would ask groups of guys in particular if they had had an extraordinary experience in sport. And all of them would raise their hands. And that was so important to make sure that women had those same extraordinary experiences. I remember my first, I was in college, at Connecticut College, and I didn't know what it was at the time. Now I know it was a blind outlet pass. This is basketball, my basketball era. Blind outlet pass, and it was just magical. I took down a rebound without even looking. I passed the bar to my teammate who was past the half court, and she caught it and took it in for points. It was just magic. And that's what sports can do for you. And you can take that magic, the knowledge that you're able to do something extraordinary throughout your entire life.
So, looking even further ahead, Anita, you're on the Coordination Commission for Brisbane 2032. What are your expectations? Obviously, it's so far ahead, but what do you think Queensland, Brisbane are going to bring to the IOC, the Olympic movement?
Brisbane was selected for under our new process, which I'm so happy about. We have a commission for the Future Olympic Games and another one for the Future Olympic Winter Games. And that commission talks with cities that are interested quietly in hosting the games. And we let them know what's important for us. And what's important for us is not that a city completely changes itself, but that the city and the games will fit together nicely. And as the discussions continue, once it gets to the point that it looks like there's a city that has all the qualifications necessary, then the city is presented, the candidates presented to the executive board. And if the executive board agrees, then it's presented to the session, because only the session, that is our board of directors, essentially. We meet once a year. Only a session can decide on the host city. So of the beautiful things for Brisbane, we've made sure that a part of their planning includes the necessary infrastructure. Not that it's going to be done just for the games, but it's being done for the community there. And that will be a great relief, we hope, for everyone. So, I mean, having said that, what will it bring? It'll bring much joy. And as you probably know, it's really across 3 cities, but they're so close together. For the rest of the world, it will look like one, and it'll be managed as one. So I am so excited and very happy to be optimistic about reaching 2032.
Thank you so much, Anita, for your inspiration and your leadership. You've just summed up so much of what all of us sort of feel about various aspects of our life, professionally, personally, having decision-making powers individually, but also working collectively with teammates and colleagues. So thank you once again for your time, your inspiration, your leadership. It's been a pleasure to have you here today.